Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 124-104 over the Dallas Mavericks to enter the All-Star break on a high note. They are now 33-21 at the 54 game mark. They jump back up from number 6 in the West. In the West, you cannot play and still drop in the standings. They go back up from number 6 to number 5 and are just a half game back of number 4 Houston. Now the Lakers will get a much needed break with a week off, although not for Luka, LeBron, and Jackson, who all have their All-Star weekend duties, but a much needed break for this group, and they will come back into a 3-game homestand before going on the road for a couple of games. Shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. An exciting update for those who are members and those who are considering becoming members. I just updated the stickers and emojis that you can use. So for some of the text, they made it a little bit bigger, but added some new ones. So there's more. I had the one like Jovan Fire emoji, but there's some other ones of me reacting to different things that will be fun for those who are members. So updated that, and we'll be making some membership changes in the coming weeks. Then tomorrow we'll be finalizing the meetup spot downtown for Sunday to watch the All-Star game for the first Buha's Block meetup of this season. But it is going to be in downtown, just trying to finalize a spot. And I'll be announcing that, putting that on YouTube. We'll put it on X, and we'll also put it on Discord. But with all that said, let's get into the game. So Lakers win 124-104. It was an interesting game because it was not a good first half from the Lakers. They were only up by 1, gave up 2 separate 12-0 runs in the first quarter and second quarter. Like first quarter, get off to a great start. They're up 16-6. Then Dallas responds with a 12-0 run. Then they're trading baskets for the majority of the quarter. And then second quarter, go on another run to take back a 12, 13-point lead and are sustaining that for a lot of the second. Then just completely let go of the rope over the final 3 minutes. Don't score a basket as Dallas goes on another 12-0 run and is only down 1 going into intermission. And then the Lakers have been very hit or miss in third quarters recently, and this was a big hit. They outscored Dallas 32-19, really create some separation there, and didn't quite put them fully away, but basically put them away, extended that early in the fourth. Dallas went on like another run. It had gotten up to like 20. Dallas got it down to, I think 12 was maybe 12 or 13 was the closest. And then Lakers end up closing it out and winning it by 20. So all things considered, a solid win for LA, considering that no Luka again. Luka missed his 4th straight game. And when asked if he'll play in the All-Star game, JJ said it's above his pay grade. So I think Luka's probably going to play in a limited fashion in the All-Star, maybe some sort of short like minutes restriction, but we'll see. Like he was the leading vote getter. He's leading the NBA in jersey and merch sales. I think this is a big moment for Luka, just as becoming arguably the face of the NBA right now, certainly the face of the Lakers, but he's in that face of the NBA conversation. I mean, is objectively, by the metrics, the most popular player in the NBA right now. I think this is a big moment for him. So I would not be surprised if he plays in a limited role in the All-Star game. And I have no issue with that. I know some people are going to have an issue that he missed tonight and plays in the All-Star game. I personally have no issue with that. But no Luka, no Deandre Ayton, who JJ said is expected back after the All-Star break, but had imaging on his knee. It's fine, but this has just been a nagging thing for DA. So they're without a couple starters. And on the Dallas side, of course, no Cooper Flagg, who got ruled out a couple days ago. That was a big blow on their side. But I would say like somewhere between a decent to solid win for the Lakers. They don't have, as I continue to say, don't have many 20-point wins. So anytime they have a 20-point win, I think it is notable. But Buha's big picture is I want to take stock of the Lakers at the All-Star break here, because it's been a bit of a wild season. It's been a roller coaster at times with this team in terms of the highs of the 7-game win streak earlier in the season, the 15-4 start, Luka looking like an MVP candidate, Austin looking like a potential all-star and all-NBA guy. You had LeBron missing the first 14 games. He comes back. They win the first 5 games that LeBron is back for. Like he returns in the beginning of that 7-game win streak. Then they hit December, and since December, the Lakers are just 18-17. Now they are trending in the right direction here, having won 4 of their past 6. I think the defense has been better lately, particularly with the 2-3 zone, and in some cases just switching 1 through 5. And like that seems to be helping a little bit, right? Again, even tonight, there were some rough defensive stretches, and specifically in that first half. But I think like things are trending in the right direction. The 2 big things for me in the second, I wouldn't even say second half of the season. I guess I would say final like third of the season here for LA, the final 28 games, going to be like getting healthy. And that is just something that is out of their control. They've not been able to do it all season. They've only had 10 games with their big 3 and only a couple games with their full projected rotation available. So like they got to find a way to get healthy. That has to be priority number 1. But beyond that, I think it's building the reps and the continuity, figuring out a way to like, I don't think the big 3 are going to have a -10 net ratings together for the rest of the season. I think that's going to improve, but you do want that number. Like an ideal number, I think, for those 3 on the floor together should be like at least +6, if not ideally +8 points per 100 possessions together. Like the Lakers should be dominating and playing pretty well with those 3 on the floor. If they can't figure that out, that then puts them in a tough situation where like you're likely losing. I mean, right now with that group, like you're losing the starting minutes, you're losing the closing minutes. Then you really have to stagger them and limit their minutes together. And I just think that's a tough situation that the Lakers don't want to be in and don't want to have to compromise. So they're going to have to figure that out. But then I really want to see them have some statement wins here down the stretch and beat teams that are either on their level or above their level. There have been very few of those types of wins this season, at least with like both teams relatively healthy. We can go back to like, I mean, I think you have to go back to the first 3 weeks of the season and look at like the 2 Minnesota wins, though one of those, there was no Ant. And then on the Lakers side, no Luka, no LeBron. So it's like, how much do you really take away from that? But certainly that first Minnesota win. Then you also go to the San Antonio win. But that was another one where on the San Antonio side, no Fox, no Harper, and Fox changed their season. Like if you look at how San Antonio started the season, Fox making his debut, and he just was named an all-star, completely shifted San Antonio's season. So San Antonio was not close to being the team that they've been recently, as the Lakers have seen. And then on the Lakers side, there was no Austin and no LeBron. So even that win, it's like some of these wins where they're so shorthanded, it is impressive, but it's tough to project how much of that will apply in a playoff series, especially with the context of there are some real defensive concerns with LA's big 3 together, and they have to figure out a way to navigate that. Like I think in some of these matchups, almost having 2 of the 3 stars has sort of helped them. It simplifies the offensive roles, and then it also limits some of the defensive volatility. But when you're going to have all 3 together, presumably down the stretch of the season, you're going to have to figure out how to win those minutes and how to win those minutes against good teams. So I would say those are my 3 big things I'm looking for. Can LA get healthy and stay healthy? At least stay healthy with, I would say, like the big 3, Rui, Jake, Marcus, Vando, like maybe those, I mean, now I'm going through like the whole rotation, but like I think there's maybe a couple guys that if one of those guys is hurt, you can sort of get by. But I think the principal like top 4 to 6 guys that they really need, ideally the top 9, but at least like the top 4 to 6, they really need healthy and available down the stretch here. Then how do they figure out some of the lineups with the big 3 and making that more productive? Because again, even going back to last year, I think they were +1 with the big 3 in terms of points per 100 possessions. So even last year, there were some limitations there with those 3 together. And then I want to see some statement wins here of, can you even beat Boston, right? Like I think that's a team that on paper, I mean, I think the Lakers should be better than them, but obviously they are kind of right there on the same level in terms of record. But Lakers have a big game in Denver in early March. They play New York again. They play Detroit again. They play Houston a couple more times. They still have another game against Denver, a week and a half later. They play OKC a couple times to close the season. So like some of these games, can they beat Denver if Jokic is playing? Can they beat OKC at all, regardless of who's available? Can they go into Houston? They got a baseball style series there on a Monday and a Wednesday. Can they at least split that baseball style, road series? Can they win some of these games? Because I think that's the final thing for me of, at this point, like, we know when they play a team that is just under their level or worse, they often win. That's been the case all season. When they've played teams really at or above their level, they often lose. And I think they need to buck that trend over the final 28 games to really have not only just like for, I think, making the fan base feel better, but really I think to show to themselves, like, because I think about the end of last year and it ultimately didn't lead to anything because the Lakers lost in the first round. But just think about how many statement wins the Lakers had down the stretch of last year. I'm about to pull it up. But you think about like we'll even say post Luka trade, because they had some before the Luka trade, but like post Luka trade at Denver, they beat Denver by 23. They beat Minnesota. They beat the Clippers a couple times in a row. They beat New York in that overtime game. Then they beat Denver again. They beat Houston. That was a big win, in late March. They beat OKC in that double header in OKC, and then we're on pace to win the second one before Luka got ejected. And so it's like they had a slew of statement wins against the best teams in the West, against the best teams in general. And I would like to see that down the stretch here, because I think that's the big thing that's missing from their resume is they don't I don't know the last like statement win they had against a team better than them. And if you are saying that, you probably have to go back to the first 3 weeks of the season. And we have clearly seen now, like, I'm sort of retiring who they were the first 20 games of the season, because that's not been the team that we've seen for over, almost 3 months now. So like things have changed. They have several guys who are playing better than that are no longer playing at that level. And, maybe they could get back to that, conjure that down the stretch here. But I think realistically, it's about like the new identity that they formed, which several things have shifted on both sides of the ball, new rotation, new lineups, etc. Can they have some of these big wins down the stretch? And again, I think do so like ideally full strength versus full strength. Lakers get healthy, everyone else is healthy. It's a heavyweight bout, and they win some of those. Don't even have to win all of them. Don't even have to go 500 in those games. But like, can they go into Houston and beat them? Can they go into OKC or even host OKC and beat them? Can they beat Denver with Jokic back? Like, I just want to see some of that. But those are my 3 things for the final 28 games of the season. Again, get healthy, figure out the best lineups and rotation around the big 3, and then statement wins against the best teams in the NBA. Back to tonight's game. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with LeBron James. And this blew my mind after the game. I was going through LeBron's game log just because I was curious. LeBron had his first triple-double of the season, 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 12 assists. But listen to this. This I think this is crazy. So LeBron's most points since January 15th. This has been something I've been harping on. Of LeBron had like an artificial cap of 25 points recently, going on almost a month here. Of over the past month, he had not scored over 25 points. He finally breaks through and has 28, his most points since January 15th against Charlotte. Tonight was also his most rebounds since December 10th, over 2 months ago, and only his second time this season he's had double-digit rebounds. And that blew my mind. It feels like he's had more games like that. I mean, he does have several games, 8 rebounds, 9 rebounds, but he's only had 2 double-digit rebounding games all season, and that's been an area where he has slipped, I think, overall defensively. Like he's just under 6 rebounds a game. So he has 10 tonight, most in over 2 months, and then 12 assists, ties his season high, which he set actually in his season debut against Utah on November 18th. So now we're going back 3 months for the last time. So like, just to recap here, most points in a month, most rebounds in 2 months, most assists in 3 months. Like this was easily, I mean, like from an all-around perspective, LeBron's best game of the season. I think there probably been a couple of, or not even a couple, maybe a few other games I would rank in totality ahead of this one, just based on the caliber of opponent. Like Dallas is still a good defense as constructed, but I think LeBron has had some big games again in some big matchups. So I don't want to say this is his best game of the season necessarily, but it's in that conversation. And again, first triple double of the season, but he hit some benchmarks tonight that he had not hit in months. And I thought that was encouraging to see. Also 4 straight games now with 10 plus assists. And I think that the clear correlation there is with no Luka, LeBron has had to step up as more of a facilitator and playmaker. Austin is still on a minutes restriction. Austin's still coming off the bench. And because of that, the offense is running more through LeBron, and we're seeing him deliver from a passing and playmaking perspective. So I just thought LeBron set an incredible tone tonight. I think sometimes he can sort of feel his way into a game and be a little bit passive maybe, or let other guys kind of, obviously Luka has the big first quarters, but then, even Austin sometimes might have, like, I think about like the OKC game, Austin has the big first half, and then, LeBron starts to be more aggressive and assertive in the second half. But tonight from the jump, LeBron scored or assisted on the first 23 points of the game for the Lakers, which is the first time in his career he's ever done that. That's the most points LeBron has ever scored or assisted on to open a game. And he was the reason they got out to that 16-6 start. And he hit his first couple threes, including one off of a flare screen. Then he had another one pulling up in transition, which triggered the timeout from Dallas. But he had some nice deep seal finishes against smaller defenders, was getting guys in the post, was attacking downhill. Like, I really like the shot selection tonight from him overall. He went 10 for 20, 2 for 7 from deep, 6 for 7 at the free throw line. So got to the free throw line and was 8 for 13 inside the arc against a pretty good defense. Did have 4 turnovers, but with the usage he had tonight, with how many assists he had, I think that is passable, and the Lakers won his minutes. The Lakers won this game in large part because LeBron was so dominant. So I think definitely best game in my opinion over the past month. Again, I would not go as far as to say like best game of the season, but it's on the short list of one of his best games of the season. And to me, this felt like a version of LeBron we had not necessarily seen in, again, a few weeks, probably going back to the first half of January. So that was nice to see him, I think, put things together in a way that we just hadn't quite seen in a little bit. Then Rui had 21 points, his most points since the Chicago game, and tied for his second most points of the season. Shot 9 for 13 from the floor, hit 3 threes, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 turnover. Lakers ran a bunch of pin downs for him and a bunch of off ball actions. And that's what you want to see from the Lakers, especially when Luka's out, DA's out. They needed more scoring beyond just LeBron and Austin, and Rui had a very efficient game tonight. I thought defensively, continues to be, I think, a bit shaky, and at times in the zone can be back cut, or he sort of there was a back cut in the fourth quarter against Clay, and I think that's still an area that he could be sharper with and sharper in, but in terms of the offensive role and what the Lakers need from him, he was stellar tonight. And I think he overall the last 2-3 weeks has been really impressive offensively. Jackson Hayes, I thought had a solid game. Definitely had some lowlights. Had the botched dunk. I don't know if he was going to try and do the East Bay Funk. It looked like he was, and that might have been his most impressive one because he would have had the shortest lead up to the dunk, and then also there was the defender right behind him, but ends up losing it out of bounds. But 16 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Really liked his short roll playmaking tonight. 3 steals on a block. 8 for 10 shooting, past Deandre Ayton for the dunks leader on the team. And, I think I had some rough calls defensively in terms of his verticality, and could be better in that regard. But Lakers, team high plus minus, Lakers were plus 26 in his 34 minutes. And with no DA, he stepped up in a big way. And I think in general has been the Lakers' best center on balance for the past month or so. So that is another mini storyline to watch here over the final 28 games or so. Jake, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. I liked his drives tonight. And, I think kind of because of the OKC game, he kind of goes through these stretches where after he has a rough shooting stretch or performance, he stops taking as many threes. And I think that was the case tonight. Only took 1 3, but just Jake doing Jake things. Marcus, oh man, Marcus is Marcus 9 points, 4 for 14 shooting, 1 for 9 on threes, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. I liked the drives tonight, and I liked the passing tonight. I thought that there was a lot of Marcus is a really smart baseline driver into drawing the low man or the big man over, and then feeding the cutter or the roller or the big man that's there for the dump off. And he had some of that tonight. Had a couple of nice little pop and stop. Floater runners, or more so floaters, on a couple of drives, and I liked that part. The threes, it was a rough shooting night for him, but also felt he was treating it as if it was not a rough shooting night and going 1 for 9. A lot of those were open in his defense, but some of them weren't, and those are the ones that you would like to see him cut out of his shot diet, because he went 3 for 5 inside the arc. You take 60% 2-point shooting from just about anybody. At least that's not a big man. It was the 3-point shooting tonight that some of these recent games when one of the stars has been out, which is basically all of them, Marcus can be a little too trigger happy and call his number a little bit too much, as we've talked about before. Defensively, I thought was solid and contributed in other ways outside of the shooting, but the shooting, it's always a seesaw with Marcus, and it definitely tilted too much in the direction of just him calling his own number on a night he just didn't have it going offensively. Off the bench, Austin had 18 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 for 10 shooting, 1 for 3 on threes, 7 for 9 on free throws. Austin, I think had a nice fourth quarter, but had a relatively quiet first 3 quarters. And now if we look at this stretch here, it's been 5 games since Austin has returned, and I don't think he has quite gotten back to the level of that he was pre-injury. And that's understandable to a degree based on how much time he missed. But if you just look at Brooklyn, he first game back only plays 20 minutes. Okay. I think you have pretty low expectations for that. Then balls out against Philly with the 35 points. But then these last 3 games, 16-5-8, 16-2-7, 18-4-6. Like, that's solid, but he's averaging 26-5-6 for the season. So, and he's still on a minutes restriction. So if you extrapolate out the minutes into play 29 against the Thunder, 28 against Dallas. So if he plays 35 minutes, these numbers are going to be a little bit higher, but I don't think he has quite gotten back to that level yet. So that'll be something to monitor coming out of the All-Star break. And I also thought tonight, for the Austin detractors, there was a lot of targeting him, and Dallas was able to get him on switches and either score on him or beat him off the dribble. So I think based on the injury and the minutes restriction and just like how much time he missed, it's understandable that it's going to take a bit of time for him to look like himself. And I think there have certainly been some highlights. He had several nice drives tonight, getting to the free throw line, the playmaking the last 3 games, like quiet playmaking to start, had 3 assists through his first couple games. Now 8 assists, 7 assists, 6 assists. So the passing has been there. I think he continues to be the best Laker at like getting downhill, putting pressure on the rim. Also is consistently looking for the bigs with pocket passes. Has cut out some of the wild lobs that he had earlier in the season. So I think there are parts of his game that are looking better, but certainly I think the next week or so should be about getting him into the space he was in pre-injury. And then Luka, 9 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 3 for 4 shooting. I just think Luke is a really smart basketball player who he has been like a seamless fit on this team, and his off-ball gravity in the way that teams just have to pay attention to him at all times. But combined with the screening, the cutting, I think we continue to see the playmaking chops with him. And it's not always going to lead to assists necessarily, though. Again, he did have 3 assists tonight, but he is quick, and he has the ability to attack a closeout and get into the teeth of the defense. And he's not really looking to score, and that is something that if you're scouting, you could probably scout for that. But he can just get the driving kick game going, get the blender going offensively for LA, and I think that has been something that it's just been I think an awesome fit for the Lakers basically from the jump. The only thing that I think has increased over the last 3 games has been teams have started to target him a bit more. And I think we saw that tonight as well. But as long as preferably Lakers are keeping Luke and Austin staggered. I also would prefer Luke and Rui staggered. I just think there's some defense limitations there, but all things considered, he's been a great fit so far, and basically exactly what I expected. Though I did not expect the 7 rebounds tonight. Like he put his nose in the mud and was tied for second in rebounding with Jackson, and then Maxey I thought had a rough first shift. I think like both of the 12-0 runs, or majority of both of the 12-0 runs in the first half came with Maxey at center, and it was a combination of Dallas getting out in transition and also a layup line and or free throw party. It feels like the clock has struck midnight a little bit with him, where he had the 2 games, and then since then has just not been the same player, and that's okay because he's in his early 30s, and I was not expecting him to be the version that we saw for a couple games, but it is just a reminder of his limitations right now. And like, he should be, at least for the time being, the 3rd string center, although maybe LA plays bigger in some configurations. And then Vando, 5 points, 6 rebounds, a couple of steals. Then the rest of the guys were garbage time. I liked Adu had a nice drive and floater. In terms of stat of the night, I'm going to go with 35 assists, which I believe is close to a season high for the Lakers. I'm sorry, I just picked this the stat of the night on the fly. I usually have it ready to go, but I'm quickly looking up Lakers season high in assists. Well, no. Season high in assists it was 38 at Washington, which I'd recently talked about a couple of weeks ago, then 36 against Atlanta. So 3rd most assists they've had in a game this season. I really liked the ball movement For the most part, there was a lot of getting out in transition, a lot of paint points. So I thought the ball movement was solid tonight. And then in terms of takeaways, I only have one takeaway, and it's going to be a short one because really at this point, we've seen what this group looks like shorthanded, and no Luka, no DA. I just want to go through this and then get into the Q&A here. I'm ready for the All-Star break. I'm ready to answer you guys' questions. Really just injury update. And so JJ talked about it pregame, that Luka has progressed really well and that the Lakers are expecting him to return after the All-Star break. I would assume that if he plays in the All-Star game, that would be an indication that he is going to return. Like JJ did say, you of course have to just be cognizant of a potential setback at any point. But the plan right now is for Luka to make his return coming out of the All-Star break. Same thing with DA. So the expectation for the Lakers right now is both of those guys will be making their return when the Lakers come out of the All-Star break. As for Austin, I would also assume that he will be off of the minutes restriction coming out of the All-Star break, but also it just depends how he progresses over the next week or so. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A. First one from Connor Phillips. Thank you for the super chat. Bucks beating Thunder by 17 rubs salt in the wound. A Darvin Ham-led Bucks team with Doc Rivers not coaching the team tonight. He was attending a funeral. So Darvin Ham was the lead coach tonight and coached the Bucks to beat the Thunder. Yeah, I mean, crazy things happen. And for what it's worth, the Thunder didn't have Shea or J-Dub. So depending on how you feel about J-Dub versus Chet, I still think, I know J-Dub hasn't been quite at the same level that he was last season. I still think overall he's the Thunder's second best player. Didn't have those two guys. Didn't have AJ Mitchell. Nikola Topic made his debut, which was awesome to see after the just adversity he's had to deal with, to say the least. So that was a cool moment tonight on the Thunder side. But yeah, I mean, they were shorthanded to a degree in terms of missing their two best players, but you should not, there aren't many circumstances you should lose to a Giannis-less Bucks team by 17 at home. So maybe the Thunder were already mentally in Cabo. It's getting interesting though, because the Spurs are right there, right behind them in terms of, they're only 2 games back now in the loss column. There's a chance the Spurs end up stealing the number 1 seed. And if they do, that completely flips the playoff bracket, because right now everyone's trying to avoid that 4-5. If it's San Antonio, that's more appealing. You just don't really want to be matched up with OKC in round 1, or frankly on their side of the bracket. Manthan, thank you for the super chat. 2 questions heading into the All-Star game. What seed do you think the Lakers are to win it all? Also, love AR-15, but he works better with only 1 star or by himself. So I guess you're asking me where I have the Lakers in terms of like most likely to win it all, if I'm ranking. Off the top of my head, I'm somewhere between 7th and 8th. That's basically where I've been with the Lakers for the last couple months. I think the Steven Adams injury and the way that Houston has been playing recently, I dropped the Lakers down to 6th in the West, and now I've considered moving them back up potentially above Houston, who I just have lost some confidence in. My top 3 is firm in terms of OKC 1, Denver 2, San Antonio 3. There's really nothing that or very little outside of injuries that can change my mind with those 3. But right now I'd probably have Minnesota 4, LA 5, and Houston 6. But that's in the West. If we add in the East, I think it gets a little tricky, because I think someone has to come out of the East, and by that process, they are technically going to have like better odds, because part of winning a championship is you just have to get to the finals and maybe catch a break. And so I'd probably put Detroit and New York as the other two teams. So I would say right now I'd probably have 4 teams above them in the West and 2 teams above them in the East. So I guess that would put them 7th. But I'm really close there with them versus Houston for like 7-8. And, but that's in like championship equity here. We're not talking about like head to head or whatnot. But I'd probably have them 7th right now. The Lakers, thank you for the super chat. Did you know LK was good off the dribble? I did. I think that was something I talked about when I broke down his game. Like he's a solid secondary playmaker and ball handler. Like I don't think you don't want him running the show. And I think he is, in terms of players you want running the offense, it's Luka 1. I think it's Austin 2. I think it's LeBron 3, although maybe it's a 2A, 2B. It's just different, right? Like Austin's going to run a lot more pick and roll. LeBron, I think at this point, he's far more effective in like post-up situations. So I guess you could debate Austin's pick and rolls versus LeBron's post-ups, but I don't think you want to be spamming a lot of LeBron pick and roll. I think with some of the ball handling and turnover issues he's had specifically with ball pressure and like in those actions. But 2A, 2B in some order. Then you get to, I think Marcus is like number 4, right behind the top 3. And then I would say Luke is probably number 5. Though Jake also, I think, has an underrated handle and ability to play make. But Luke has been, I think the thing with him that I really like is he's just a quick decision maker. And I've been really impressed with just his basketball IQ. And again, I can't state it, can't overstate it. Just the way he's seamlessly fit in of, they're not running a bunch of complicated stuff necessarily when he's out there, but his ability to, like, one of the things I talked about when I was previewing or post trade was like, I think you're going to see a lot of guard to guard and like inverted screening actions. And that's what we have seen. And a lot of times he'll slip it, right, or ghost it, and he'll just like tap the guy on like the opposite leg to kind of throw the defender off. And so I think he's very much a guy of, if I'm open, I have the ultimate green light. If I am not open, I'm going to try to put the ball on the ground, penetrate the defense, and then look for who's open and like keep the wheel moving offensively. So I think offensively, it's been a great fit. The only thing you could like really nitpick is like the Lakers just need to do more stuff for him, right? Like they need to get him going more. And this has been a limitation with their offense in terms of even I was going through Rui's game logs, and Rui's season high in threes made is only 4. And he's done it, I think, 3 times. And that's not on Rui. That's on the Lakers. That's on their offense. Is like a guy like Rui with how great of a shooter Rui is, and he's still maintaining that mid-40s 3-point percentage. Rui should have games of 6, 7, 8 threes made, but that's just not how the Lakers offense runs. So I think that they got to find ways to get Rui and Luke more 3-point shots. Like those dudes should be letting it fly as much as possible from deep, within the context of like high percentage looks. And I think that's like another goal for LA as we preview the post All-Star break. Like they need to get those guys going even more. Jeffrey J. Cal, thank you for the super chat. Where do you see us finishing in the West based off remaining strength of schedule? Is 3 or 4 in play, or more likely 5 or 6? Good question. I just looked this up. So the Lakers actually have the second easiest remaining schedule among the top 6. The only team that has an easier schedule is Houston. And there's like a decent gap there where I think the top 3, Denver actually has the toughest remaining schedule. I think it's Denver, OKC, Minnesota, like top 3 in the league. And then there's a bit of a gap. And then it's San Antonio is like 9th. And then there's a bit of a gap. And I think the Lakers are like 16th or something like that. 15, 16. And then Houston's got like the 5th easiest schedule, something crazy like that. You look at, they're like not playing any of the other good teams basically the rest of the way. So that concerns me a little bit, just because Houston is the team I was looking at maybe to drop or like I had the least confidence in. Like Minnesota's a wild card too. But I thought like Houston having such an easy schedule, could be a factor in terms of them just staying afloat. But I don't think three is technically in play, right? Like I think the top two are going to be locked up with OKC and San Antonio in some order. I would still bet on OKC being 1 and San Antonio being 2. But I mean, at this point, San Antonio already has a 4-game lead in the loss column on anybody else in the West. They have a 5-game lead on the Lakers. OKC has a 6-game lead and a 7-game lead on the Lakers. So I don't see that gap shrinking. So I think OKC and San Antonio are locked into the top 2. Then I think it's really going to come down to health and momentum and strength of schedule to a degree. I think 3 is in play. I would also just like caution that even if the Lakers have an easier schedule than some of these teams, the Lakers have been a 500 team basically for 2.5 months. So a lot of that is injury related. A lot of that is just how they've been playing. So if they go 500 the rest of the way, or even like a little bit above 500, they're going to end up 5 to 7 in depending on how everyone else performs. So I would say right now, I'm somewhere between the 4 and 5 seed. I think they're probably going to be in the 4 or 5 matchup. It's just a matter of whether they have home court or not. That, as of right now, would unfortunately put them on the same side of the bracket as OKC, which I know some people are going to welcome that. Some people are going to say, hey, play the champs earlier. I think there's an argument for that. I just also think the Lakers' best path to a deep playoff run is probably avoiding OKC. And everyone else, I think they have like at least a puncher's chance against. OKC is the one team that I just think that there's I think their stars can match LA's stars, if not surpass them as a trio. And they also have just a continuity reps advantage. But then you also like just comparing their role players, I don't think it's close. And in a lot of ways, like Alex Caruso's a better Marcus Smart. Isaiah Joe's a better Luke Kennard. Like you just go down the line, and that's we haven't mentioned. I mean, maybe Wallace is the better Smart. Caruso is the better Vando. However you want to like divvy it up. I didn't even mention Lou Dort, better Laravia. I don't know. Like it's not imperfect comparisons, but they just win like a lot of those head-to-head matchups that I would not want to play OKC if I'm the Lakers, despite playing them well. I mean, gun to my head, I'd probably say the 5 seed because I'm a little bit more on the conservative side here. And I also have a hard time believing the Lakers are going to get fully healthy over the final 28 games. They just have not been able to do that. And then they also have just not been playing like great basketball overall, though they have been playing better lately. But if I had to pick 2 seeds, if you gave me 2 options, I would say 4 or 5. Right now, I would lean 5, but I think they'll be in one of those 2 seeds. Northern Red Knights, thank you for the super chat. 2 questions. Do you accept early morning gang, European here? And when will we admit Rui isn't a championship starter? He's charming, but we should sell high. I accept any gangs here. All gangs are welcome. This is a pro gang space. Early gang. Look, late night gang for those on the West Coast and East Coast, just because of the time we go live. But if it's whatever time it is for you, then, for some people it's early morning. For some people it's next day, lunchtime, next night, if they're super, 18 hours ahead, whatever. So you're still part of the late night gang because just like it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, it's always late night somewhere. But yeah, no, we definitely accepted. I mean, in general, I agree with this premise of like, I think Rui's recently talked about Rui, Jake, and Marcus and how like none of them would start on any of the other top 6 teams in the West, with the exception of maybe being Rui. Although I had forgotten when I was talking about it, I still had Harrison Barnes in my mind as the Spurs starter. They actually switched it to Champagnie, and I actually think they would start him over Rui. So I don't think that any of those 3 guys who are in that 5th starter competition would be starting on any of the other top 5 teams in the West. And Yeah, I mean, I think there is a path for Rui as a starter. I think it's a bit of a narrow path. I've referenced this several times. I think if you have like two all defense or very high level defenders around him in the front court, I've mentioned OKC and Minnesota as a couple of situations where if he just replaced the starting four in this alternate reality, I think you could still win in that context because he is an elite shooter and that is a valuable thing. But to your point, outside of 3-point shooting and his like one dribble mid-range, I think he's basically below average in every other facet of the game. If you talk about ball handling, passing, rebounding, even finishing, post ups, like he does not grade out well in those areas. The cutting has not been at the same level this season. I think the defense has really slipped this season compared to last season. And so he has value as a shooter, but you need to factor in the rest of your front court. Okay, well, if Rui is one of our three front court players, we need to make up with like two good rebounders, two good defenders, ideally that's why like Minnesota, it's like you got Jaden McDaniels, who's grown into more of an on-ball guy and a guy who can do more off the dribble, both in scoring and passing. And like you need just like more dynamic pieces around him because he's more of a specialist. And so to your point, I think there is a pathway to him starting, but you almost need like an embarrassment of defensive riches and just like a dynamic, loaded starting group. Otherwise, to me, he's more of a good bench player, a top seven guy on a good team. And that's sort of what he's become for the Lakers. Like he's been starting lately with Luka out and with Austin on the minutes restriction. But I think once Austin is off the minutes restriction, he's going to return to the starting group and Rui will continue to come off the bench or go back to coming off the bench. In terms of selling high, I mean, I think that I said this going into the deadline, and I've said this a few times now. Like I took the Lakers not trading Rui as a sign that they are strongly considering retaining him. And it's going to be interesting to see because he's got a $27.4 million cap hold, which I would be shocked if he signs a contract in that range. So I think he's almost certainly going to be signing a contract $7 to $10 million less than that, and like an annual, average annual value standpoint. So it'll be interesting to see. Like he's one of the guys. Like with Austin, you actually want to keep Austin on his cap hold and use that to help you get space because Austin's cap hold is basically like half of the contract he's probably going to sign. With Rui, it's the inverse where you actually want to sign Rui early, probably in free agency if you are going to retain him. But in terms of like losing the asset, I know that's not exactly what you're saying here. I think it's just TBD on like what happens this summer and what the Lakers do. Is there a team that wants Rui? Maybe you can sign and trade him, get an asset back, or that just clears up cap space. You don't have the cap hold on the books, and you're not. You could just rescind his rights, but then at least like get something back for him if you can. Or you just retain him, hopefully at a team friendly number, and then he fits in. But as I've been saying though, the Lakers have several needs this summer, especially if you take like this whole cap space plan is somewhat predicated on LeBron not being there. Unless LeBron is taking a giant like minimum level or taxpayer MLE type haircut, this is somewhat predicated on LeBron not being there. LA getting trading for a big name or a high level starter, poaching a guy in restricted free agency. But it's like, even if you do one of those things, right? You trade on the high end, you trade for Giannis. On maybe the more realistic end, you like overpay and poach Tari Eason from Houston. That's going to take up like at least half, if not more, of your cap space. And now you have to fill in the rest of the gaps with the starting group and the bench with like $20 million. And then on top of that, if you are, if you're re-signing Rui, let's just say it's like 18, he gets a similar contract, 16, 18, whatever. You do get some flexibility there because it's lower than the cap hold, but like that still is going to eat into some of your theoretical cap space and flexibility. So you could just kind of end up with, Eason or Watson, you bring back Rui, and then you get to do like one other move in terms of like an impact player, and that could be a center or that could be a bench player. But like then that's kind of your team. And if it ends up being like DeAndre Ayton, Peyton Watson, Rui, Austin, Luka, and like a bench upgrade, and then basically the same group, I just don't think that group is good enough. And that's also factoring in like you're losing LeBron there. And I know that LeBron has maybe not been, the same level as last season or lived up to maybe like the $53 million salary slot, but he's still an all-star. He has still played at a certain level. And I don't think that just like swapping in a restricted free agent or whoever is going to offset the LeBron loss. Like you're probably going to need a couple players to do that. And then you also have other holes that you need to. So I just think the Lakers have a long to-do list that I'm not quite sure how they're going to be able to realistically pull it off, at least in one summer. I think this is a multi-transactional cycle situation, but then we're talking about like another incomplete roster, another year of this, and then like 2027-28 is now the season that they're really hoping to be like the bona fide contenders. King Rifa _Chifa. I see you change the profile picture. I like it. Jovan. I think Rui's got to take more shot attempts like this. Smart, less shots. LOL. How do we maximize the starting lineup when Luka's back? I agree. I think it's a good thing that they involved Rui, and I also think involved him in actions and sets that play to his strengths, which are either as a catch and shoot spot up guy or curling off of pin downs into that 1 to 2 dribble post. Mid range shot that he is just automatic with. And Marcus, look, he's been shooting 40% on threes since January 1st. So I understand it to a degree, but certainly a night like tonight, you can't go 1 for 9 on threes. Like he was forcing it too much. Maximizing the starting group. I mean, I think it's going to be Marcus as the 5th starter, and I think there's been some signs of that. Like JJ has, when he's played the big 3 with DA, it has often been Marcus as the 5th guy. He tried out Rui as the 5th guy against Brooklyn. They ran off the floor, 7-0 run in 2 minutes. So he has not played that lineup again. So I think it's going to be like, there's been some signs it's going to be Marcus. Now, the issue with that, or the only issue, and this is not a Marcus thing, this is just in general, I don't think DA has been the same player, and I think that has impacted the starting groups in general, as we've seen DA's motor drop and his production drop. I think the starting group has struggled a bit and has not been as good defensively. And then you also have the backdrop of the big 3 and sort of them still going through their growing pains of not quite knowing how to fit in together. And still, I mean, certainly on the defensive side, there being some holes there that you have to plug. So I would say it's going to be like, I don't have high expectations, to be completely honest, for the projected starting group, at least at the start. I think they can grow into being a good lineup, but they just have not played that much together. And they've also played like far apart, right? Like you had the stretch in November, you had a stretch in December, and then you had the recent stretch here, but it's been like pretty spaced out, and they've just had so many injuries that, to those 5 players specifically, that it has just prevented them from getting the necessary reps. So I think it's going to take some time because, again, the big 3 have just not clicked this season, like to as a trio, right? Individually and in pairings, they have fit well together. I'm now, quickly, I just realized Manthan had asked a second question about AR. I do think AR is better with 1 star or by himself. I don't know if you're saying either or here. I think you are asking, like, I mean, I think he's looked the best as the lead guy. Like, just individually, he's looked the best as the lead guy. But he also has been, like, if you look at the lineup data, he's been something of a connector where he's worked with Luka and he's worked with LeBron. So I do think he's adaptable and malleable in that way. But I do think in general, he's looked better when it's only 2 of the stars or himself. In part because he's had to probably take the biggest step back when it's been the three of them. Now, back to this question. I think it's got to be some patience in terms of like the group just is going to have to go through some lumps together. But I am optimistic longer term they can be a solid lineup. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Do you think they want it this year? To me, one of the biggest issues I see is heart or lack thereof. The fight and focus seems blah. So I made this point a couple of streams ago. I called the Lakers, depending on your term of choice, you could call them an ADD team. You can call them an ADHD team. But their focus is just not, and this has been something I've harped on with them. And this is, I thought it really showed up in the OKC game, where OKC is a professional, serious basketball team. And does that mean they're not going to make any mistakes? Like, no, there's going to be possessions. The low man doesn't rotate. There's going to be possessions they miscommunicate on a closeout. There's going to be possessions offensively. Jalen Williams against the Lakers is throwing the ball all over the court, left and right. Guys are missing wide open shots. That stuff happens. But OKC is locked in on basically every possession, at least 90+% of the possessions. And like, if they screw up, they take it very seriously. And you can tell like there's oh shit, I did this. I'm not going to do that again. And you don't see like the same types of mistakes. With the Lakers, it's the exact opposite of, it'll be the same mistakes over and over again in the same game, and then also over and over again in general. And they do go through these stretches of just a malaise where they don't care. Maybe that's a little harsh, but like they look like they don't care. And offensively, they're going through the motions. It's dribble the ball up slowly, go into an action, go into another action. All right, side to side, side to side. Oh, there's 6 on the shot clock. Let's try to pull some magic out of somewhere. And turnovers, contested jumpers, not getting downhill, not getting into the paint, not getting the free throw line. And they just are in molasses offensively. Then defensively, not getting back in transition, straight line drives to the rim, guys creating a bunch of separation for mid-range jumpers, not boxing out, 20 good seconds of defense, then collapse the final 4 seconds. Like, we just see a lot of these same issues. So in terms of do they want it, I believe they want it. I do think, though, that this group, they don't have a lot of guys who play hard every single possession. I think we've seen some more consistency with that, but like in general, I think it's about like half the rotation. And I think you want that to be closer to full or 80-90% of the rotation. And I just think that's kind of been, and that's why like there's been stretches when they've played the Banshees, when they played some of the bench guys more, at least those guys are playing hard, and you could see that kind of like galvanize the group. But in general, this team kind of has a relaxed personality that I just think is inherent to the group. And I thought, they showed it on the broadcast at halftime that I think the Lakers have only led 21 games this season at halftime, which is the fewest of any team above 500. So like, that's just another one of these stats when we look at the net rating, we look at the point differential, we look at the record against above 500 teams. Another one of these is like fewest halftime leads of any team above 500. And that just speaks to like the Lakers getting off to all these slow starts. And I think a big part of that has been the starting group at times, and like playing a relatively low motor lineup for a part of the season. But part of that's just like baked into who this group is. And I think we're 54 games in. I don't know how much that's going to change. Now, they do have the talent, and they can focus for stretches. And we see that a lot in third quarters, fourth quarters. But I just think against the best teams, like that's ultimately what does them in. Is the Lakers on average probably are focused for 25 to 40% of a game. And I would say like the average good team is probably closer to like 65, 70%. So then when the Lakers play these teams and they try to ratchet it up and be like, all right, we're going to try to go like 60, 70% now, it's like harder for them to get there and get there consistently. And then on top of that, if the other team starts to ratchet it up, like them going from 70 to like 90 is a little bit easier than LA making up the big ground that I think they have to make up. So I'm with you too. Like the fight and the focus are not always there. They're not always there consistently. There are times this group just goes through the motion, especially against lesser teams. But again, then it's like they can't quite turn it on to the level they need to against good teams. That's why I just continually preach habits with this team of, and that's where like, I mean, they've had some progress, the Brooklyn game, the Washington game, like wire to wire wins of just blowouts. I want to see more of that down the stretch as well, of just when you play a crappy team, put them away in the first quarter, be up 38-20 at the end of the first. And like, then you want to try hard for one quarter, try hard in the first and get a big lead and then coast the rest of the way. But they're like, we're just going to mess around for 2-3 quarters, then flip a switch when we need to. But you can't do that against the best teams. Days, thank you for the super chat. Can't help but wonder if new ownership would trade Luka. I do not foresee that at all. And I think that would be a giant mistake, to say the least. I think there is something to the new ownership in terms of, you look at the way they've operated with the Dodgers and some of the cold, calculated decisions. Like they do operate very much in like what's best for the organization and always putting the organization first, and in both like the present and the future, sort of weighing that scale and that balance there. But I think they're going to make some tough decisions coming up here in the next like year or so, and certainly make some they're just going to have to make some changes to this roster that are necessary and sort of, I think, really reshaping it, because I do think it needs a serious reshape, but that's not Luka. I think Luka is one of one. Luka is all we've talked about for the last 12 months has been like, this has crossed not just the NBA, this has crossed into the greater sports world. This has crossed into pop culture. This has crossed into movies and maybe not quite movies, but like TV shows. And like I'll be listening to like a random podcast and somehow the Luka trade will get brought up. Like it's everywhere. It's undeniable. And the reason was just because of the shock of Dallas giving that guy up. And maybe there's some Mavericks fans watching right now, so I don't need to rehash this for you guys. But no, they're not trading Luka. That's not happening. King Refa _Chifa, do you think JJ plays 9 to 10 guys in the playoffs? LMAO. I think he goes with 9, or that'll be the. It's a good question because obviously, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't mention 6 as an option, because that would be more in line with his playoff track record. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I think if let's just for a second presume that the starting group is the starting group, I think it's going to be, and it's going to be Marcus as the 5th guy. So that's your starting 5. Then I think Rui is locked in. I think Jackson is probably locked in just as a backup and DA insurance. And then we get to a part of the rotation where I don't know that Jake, Luke, and Vando are all going to be like Jake has been, I would say, the best of those 3 in like the big picture of the season. So I think he's obviously been starting for a while. So I think Jake is probably like the 8th guy or 7th or 8th guy. I just pencil in Jackson with a certain role because the Lakers need size. They need 2 centers out there. Jake's probably in there, and that's at 8. And then like Luke versus Vando, it might just come down to the series. And is it more of an offensive series or is it more of a defensive series? Maybe he does. Like, I think the Lakers have 10 guys who deserve to play. It's just hard to do that in the playoffs when Luka is going to be playing 40 to 42 minutes. Austin's going to be playing 38 to 40, 41 minutes. LeBron's going to be playing high 30s, maybe even around 40. So that right there with just the big three, you've got like 8 to 10 minutes remaining at three positions, to say nothing of like the center spot will probably be entirely taken up by DA and Jackson, maybe a little bit of small ball. But that's almost like that's one position completely off the board with two guys, and then three positions locked up to a big degree with those three guys. Then Marcus, obviously, I think will probably be like let's just say like low 30s. Then maybe Rui fills in the rest of the Marcus minutes at that position. So he's at like let's just say 16 minutes. And then he's obviously getting some of the other minutes. I think he's going to be at least in like mid to high 20s. So if not around 30. So like you might have like five guys kind of, six guys kind of hovering around 30 plus minutes. That only leaves so much for Jake and Jackson and Vando and Luke. So I do think there's probably competition between Vando and Luke for like the ninth spot of like who makes more sense. But I could see him starting with 10 and then maybe whittling it down over the course of a series. But you often start with 9 in the playoffs and then whittle it down to like 7 or 8. So a lot of time until then. Guys got to stay healthy. But for now, I would lean more on the 9 side, which does mean someone is going to be cut from the rotation. Madison, any opponents Lakers can beat round 1. So I tentatively have them ahead of Houston right now, and that's not like, it's weird because I'm not saying I would pick them over Houston. It's more so just I'm actually less confident. Assuming Houston is not matched up with the Lakers in round 1, I think Houston is probably going to lose in round 1. Like I would pick OKC, San Antonio, or Denver over them easily. And then Minnesota, I think that's pretty close, but I would lean Minnesota. So my confidence in Houston has dropped a bit with the Adams injury, with how they've been playing lately. For the Lakers, I do think right now, if they're matched up with any of the other top 5 teams in the West, I probably would pick. I would pick OKC. I would pick Denver. I think I would pick Minnesota. San Antonio and Houston are tough because those two teams have technically not won playoff series together. So young teams often take their lumps during a playoff journey, right? And you even think about the Warriors before their big breakthrough in 2015. They had the 2013 run where they crashed the party. They beat Denver in round 1. They have a competitive series with San Antonio in round 2. They lose in round 2. But it's not even linear progress with Golden State, because then they lose in round 1 the next year against the Clippers in 7. Then that next summer into the next season, the preseason, they go undefeated. They win 67 games. They win the title. Then they go and win 73 and lose in game 7. But like, that's kind of, you think about this OKC team, and they lost in the first round. They lost in the second round. Then they made their jump. So that's kind of how these things go. Which, Houston did lose in round 1 last year, but it was a different team. No KD. They had Brooks. They had Green. We'll see what happens with Fred VanVleet, but they still have not broken through and won a series. And same thing with San Antonio. Very young group. De'Aaron Fox has only been in the playoffs once. Wemby hasn't. Harper hasn't. Castle hasn't. So there's some unknowns there of how they're going to handle the playoff pressure cooker. Now, between the two, I have a lot more confidence in San Antonio. I just think they're a straight up better team, but you just don't know how they're going to handle that. But at the same time, you could point to the Lakers and like, yes, LeBron has won multiple titles, been to the finals a billion times. Luka's been to the finals, been to the conference finals. Austin's been to a conference finals. Rui's been to a conference finals. Vando's been to a conference finals. And I think that's it off the top of my head. But Marcus has been to the finals and several conference finals. So like, they have guys who have experience in the primary rotation and like key figures, but they haven't done it together, right? And they got we just call a spade a spade. They got their asses kicked in round 1 against Minnesota. So like it's there's just some unknowns there, right? Like OKC defending champs, they've been great all season with the exception, a little bit more pedestrian lately. Denver has the championship foundation with Jokic and Murray and Gordon. They've been on multiple playoff runs together. Like there's a little bit more of institutional confidence there. The rest of the West is a bit of a wild card. So before even mentioning like Phoenix and Golden State. So I would say I think Houston and San Antonio in a weird way. I think Houston would be the team I'd have the most confidence with, despite the Christmas result. But San Antonio, but I guess I would rank it like Houston 1, Minnesota 2, San Antonio 3, Denver 4, OKC 5. That would be my ranking of teams I would want to play if I'm the Lakers. Jovan Buha Muse. I like this name. I like this profile picture. I appreciate it. Jovan, huge fan question for you personally. Would you rather have the Lakers have a deep playoff run, but Rob now makes little changes, or early exit so drastic changes happen? Well, I've said this before. Like I don't root for results because I have separated my fandom from my job. At the same time, I love the late night gang. So I understand for your guys' sake and health and well-being, it would be great if the Lakers had a deep playoff run and you all were happy. To this point, though, there is something to this, because we could go back to 2023 and the run that the Lakers made to the Western Conference Finals, and that sort of gave the front office just a blanket to protect their decisions with the roster in terms of, well, we just made the Western Conference Finals, so like we just want to see what this group could do moving forward, right? And that was the company line going into 2023-24. Then coming out of 2023-24, it was, well, we weren't healthy this year, so like we still got to give it some more time. And that, I think, would be really disappointing if that was the result here. Like, sure, if the Lakers make the second round, third round, if they make the finals, whatever, clearly something clicked to the degree that they made that deep of a run, right? Like if the Lakers make the Western Conference Finals, something went right. Now, maybe they caught a break with the bracket. Maybe there was a big injury on the other side in the series. Like there's always factors that, all their shooters got hot in the same, all their shooters, they have 5 guys shooting 40% on threes against OKC, and like they just get hot at the right time and beat OKC. Those things can happen. But I do think like there clearly are some limitations with this group. They've been a bottom 10 defense all season. They don't have enough two-way viability. It is a lot of JJ having to craft the perfect lineup every single night, that I would hope what a deep playoff run would show the front office would actually be like, we like the foundation, and it's Luka and Austin, and we'll see who performs, like in this theoretical, who performs well, who's worth keeping, who do you get rid of. But then that should make you want to invest even more in that group and say, hey, how can we get this group to the next level? So I guess I'm more on the side of I want more drastic changes. So if it was between these two, I guess like, and also I know how Laker fans think. So I mean, if you lose in round 1 versus round 3, like round 3 is more exciting, but you didn't win a championship at the end of the day. So I guess I would hope for more of a deep playoff run with big changes. But if it's between these two, I think for the health of the franchise and for them to win a championship, they will need big changes to this roster. So I guess I'd rather take a short-term step back for a big jump in the future rather than pat yourself on the back for like a second-round team or maybe a third-round team, likely based on some fortune to some degree, and then just keep the same roster. Like I think that would be a mistake. All right, going to go 15 more minutes here until we get to the hour 30 mark. Tally Khalifa, is Kessler worth going into a bidding war for and allocating cap space for multiple days in free agency? It's tough to answer this in a vacuum without knowing the alternative options, right? And that's I'm a big optionality guy. I like to know what the available options are, right? Like if Giannis is off the table, if there's no other potential high impact like star level player that's available, if none of the other RFAs are available, and it's also looking like teams aren't really going to be shedding money in trades, like I think, yes, this is a no-brainer. If they have a plethora of options, then that potentially changes that. In general, though, I would say Kessler is at the top of my board. I think he is one of the more underrated young players in the league. I would be doing whatever I could to try to acquire him like within reason, right? I'm not going to offer him $50 million in the Lakers' entire cap space, but if you could get him somewhere in that $25 to $30 million range, even if it requires you throwing in a pick to sweeten the deal and get Utah to sign and trade him to you, and that gets him a little bit more money, and then you are using that, then you have a justification for saving the pick. Like that would be a fair justification for saving the pick. Then okay, like that, I think that would be worth it. But you also do a lot of your due diligence going into free agency, so I think the Lakers will have a pretty good sense of, like, they will have had some conversations, we'll say, with Kessler's people and how realistic this is. So I think that's another thing here is like the Lakers should know going into free agency, if they do the proper back channeling, sort of what the odds are of even poaching Kessler. I do think that based on the reports that have been out there, they've turned down multiple firsts from, and it's unclear how many firsts. I think it was a couple from Indiana, and then I'm not sure with Toronto, but they've turned down aggressive trade offers at the deadline from Indiana and Toronto. So I think it wouldn't really make any sense for Utah to turn those down and then let Kessler walk. So that is something where, I mean, even if the Lakers offered 2 firsts for him to potentially sign him, and now you're like going all in, basically, you're using a big chunk of your cap space and giving up 2 of your 3 firsts, or 2 firsts and then the other one that's technically a drafted player, which I like that clarification. That's a big price to pay, right? So in general, I'm pro Kessler, and I think the Lakers should be aggressive in trying to get him. He to me is probably the least realistic. With Peyton Watson, there's a real cap crunch there with Denver. I think they're going to look to dump either Cam Johnson or Christian Brown, because Peyton Watson's been their 4th best player this year and has really broken out and like just changed how they view their core. I think the cleanest path for them would just be getting rid of Cam Johnson, but he's going to be tougher to get rid of than Brown. And then Houston, like I think the fully formed version of Houston is Tari Eason off the bench. I think it's either Fred VanVleet starting or Reed growing into like the full-time starting role with Amen Thompson, KD, Jabari, and Şengün. So Tari Eason like is a really valuable player and is a really nice player. The new CBA, it's tough to pay guys like mid-20s off of the bench, especially if you have a loaded starting group. Amen Thompson's going to be up for an extension. Reed will be up for an extension. Jabari's extension obviously kicking in. So Houston's going to have to make some tough financial decisions as well. So I do think Eason's the most gettable, then Watson, then Kessler. But if the Lakers have a shot for Kessler, I think they have to go for it, because I think he's Gobert light, but also with a better balance to his game in terms of better offensive rebounder and better offensive player, in my opinion. So like I would take a worse version of Gobert defensively with higher offensive upside, because as we've seen countless times in the playoffs, I actually think his offense is more of a limiting factor than his defense. And I think Kessler defense unto himself, monster rebounder, monster finisher. I think he'd fit with Luka. I think he'd fit with Austin. Lakers would keep this the snow lineup going, and it'd be funny. Connor asks, what is the worst case scenario for the offseason if we can't get any of the restricted free agents? Could you see us not trading any picks and effectively punting next season? I'm optimistic in the sense of I think LA is going to land an impact player, whether that's a free agent or trading for someone. I'm fairly confident in that. What I'm less confident in is them building out the rest of the group with the assets that they have, because again, 60 million is like on the high side for them. Like I'm going to do a show soon with Eric Pincus breaking down the different pathways to their cap space. So we'll get more into it then, but 60 million is on the high side. I think 50 million is more attainable. And again, if you have 50 million, a factor will be Rui and his cap hold and how that factors into all this and if they're keeping him. But if you're spending 25, 30 million, that's half your cap space. That's potentially more than half your cap space. And now you have 20 million to play with for, I think, 2 starters and like more bench depth. That's not a lot of cash for that, right? So the Lakers, I think, are in a position to add one impact player. So I guess my realistic worst case, in my opinion, is they add like one guy and then they underwhelm with the rest of the group or just sort of run it back. And then it's like, if you just swap out LeBron and put Peyton Watson in there, I think you're worse offensively and you're better defensively. And maybe that balances it out to like a better spot, but I think they need more than just like a 1-for-1 swap. So I think my realistic worst case scenario is like they add the like splashy name that they could then sell as like, hey, we got Peyton Watson, we got Walker Kessler, we got Lou Dort. But then like they need more than that, right? Like, especially if you're losing LeBron, you still need more depth. You need more two-way pieces. And if you just swap out LeBron for like another starter, I don't think that's enough. So I would say that's my realistic worst case scenario is like they get like the one name, right? And then that's kind of all they do. I would say like best case scenario is they get the name and maybe they get 2 names. Maybe they sign somebody and trade for somebody, and then they get somebody on like a discount, and some of the incumbent guys take pay cuts, and then that situation I think is closer to what they need. I'm just skeptical in general that they're able to pull off all these moves, because I think they're going to need to do several things, and I think it's a little bit trickier than they are leading on right now. Super chat from Jay. Thank you for the super chat. I might be in the minority, but I'm glad we didn't ship Rui, one of the better catch and shoot players in the league and solid in the playoffs last year too. I don't know the fan bases. I feel like I don't have a great pulse. Like I think people are a little bit more down on Rui, but I know Rui's got some diehard stands still. But I agree with you. I think for me with Rui, it's more about putting him in the right role. And it's just like, ideally you're not relying on him defensively. I think that's like my biggest thing is putting Rui in lineups where you don't have to rely on him defensively, because I think that is a losing proposition. But as a shooter, he's the second best shooter on the team. And that's only because they just added the best shooter in the NBA, or arguably best shooter in the NBA in Kennard. And to your point, Rui does have some proof of concept. My one thing with him in the playoffs last year is I did think it was a pretty backloaded performance where he was much better in game 4 and 5 than he was the first 3 games. But like, so if you look at the totality of the series, I would say he was solid. I do think he had like 3 meh to decent games and then 2 like good games, and that affected his averages. That also is like the last thing people remember is like him playing well in game 4 and game 5, but I don't think he was quite at that level games 1 through 3. But still, I think, I mean, go back to 2023 as well, right? In his performance during the conference finals run, like he does, and he's got the experience with LeBron and with Austin. So yeah, I mean, I think in a certain role, and if you're protecting some of the defense limitations, I'm totally cool with it. And then Jay, again, my hope is Braun is willing to come back for 15-ish million, and you're still able to get a couple other solid pieces like Watson, et cetera. I think that's the best case scenario, right? I don't know what, because there's been a lot of Cleveland buzz, right, about LeBron potentially going back, but you look at Cleveland's financial situation right now, all they're really going to have to offer is minimum contract, unless they like make some big trades and move a bunch of salary around. So it does feel like if he does not retire, and if he is potentially even looking elsewhere, the financial options, like if you look at New York or Cleveland, they're going to be relatively low in terms of like the actual dollar amount they can offer. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the one thing, and I've talked about this, and it's not even, I talked about this on Lakers Collective. It's not even like an anti-Bron thing, because I don't have to state my Bron stuff, but like you guys know that, or some of you know that, growing up, he was my favorite player. So I think that context is necessary anytime I'm about to say something where people might get mad at me. But like, I do think there is something to the Lakers just might have to move, and like the ultimate next era is going to happen at some point, whether it's next year, the year after. Like there will be a future era of the Lakers with Luka and likely Austin that does not feature LeBron, just because he's going to retire at some point, whether he retires as a Laker or he goes elsewhere or whatever. He's obviously going to retire at some point in the next year or two, right? So I think the longer he stays, the more that's pushing that future into like the distance. And the counterpoint is maybe they could win a championship or put it together with him on the roster, especially with him on a lesser salary. But I do think like the Lakers are building toward that late 2020s version of whatever they're going to be. And the longer LeBron is on the team, and it's not even his fault, but it's just like by that process, because he just dropped a 28-point triple-double tonight, because he's so good, because he's such a big part of the team, that like it completely changes the way the starting group looks, changes the style of play to a degree. And I think the Lakers do need to get into like the next era sooner than later. Now, I also think there's some history there. So like if he wants to play one more year, if next year's his final year, and he's like, I want to close my season out, or my career out as a Laker, and I'm going to take a big pay cut, then I think that is obviously on the Lakers to decide what they want to do. But like, I'm ultimately cool with that. If that's how he wants to finish his career, and that's what he wants, then I'm not going to have an issue with that. But I do think, like, again, the Lakers are eventually building toward a post LeBron future. And in some ways, I think that the quicker they can get there, the better it is for the future version of the team, because that future version is probably going to need a season or two to really click. And so if you keep pushing off the future, at some point, I think that it's just not really the best strategy. So we'll see, but certainly I would be open to it if he's willing to take a big pay cut like that. Connor says, my camera is having a stroke. I hope not. I don't see anything on my side. Okay, now we get RK saying Bigfoot level clarity. Okay, well, it's showing me clear. I can pull up the YouTube stream right now. I think my wife just got home, so she might have just tanked. Oh yeah, I see it. Okay. My wife might have just tanked the Wi-Fi. All right. Well, there's nothing I can do. So I'm going to keep going here. I mean, I'm about to wrap, so we'll go a couple more minutes. Rami says, what up, Rami? Just showing thoughts on PJ Washington draft night trade. I'd be open to it. Depending on the price, like I would, he's a player I would give a first up for, especially given the proof of concept you have with he and Luka and just that fit there. So yeah, I like PJ Washington. OMG asks, Jovan, do you think JJ will learn from his mistakes after getting schooled last season in the playoffs by Finch? Because I think he's too stubborn and hesitant to make in-game changes. Very fair question. And I don't know the answer because I think I've had some issues with the process this season, and I think there has been a continued level of stubbornness. And look, any coach worth their salt is going to have some level, like you need conviction as a coach, you need beliefs, you need principles, you need things that you need hills you're going to die on. But I think a lot of JJ's hills are good. Some of them have been questionable and have been hills that it's sort of been obvious he's going to have to change, and then he ends up changing it. So I think this year, for example, like sticking with the starting group as long as he did, and just some of the rotation, then pulling Vando out of the rotation, and like just some of the things that he's done at times. And also like taking, I think a lot of it too long to go to more creative defensive schemes. Like some of the stuff's a little gimmicky. I have my concerns about how it's going to translate in the playoffs, but we have seen like the last 15 games as he's ramped up zone and trapping more in certain matchups. And like that was stuff I kind of wish he did a little bit earlier in the season. So certainly stubbornness is part of his early coaching profile, but I don't know, to be completely honest with you. Like, I think he's good at, we've seen it in the regular season last year and this year, he is good at like the one game, I'm going to scheme for this opponent. But I think the next level for him is the chess match of, because even like the initial approach and game plan against the Wolves, I thought was solid. It's just once the Wolves started throwing their counters, the Lakers had and like freaky stuff happened. Luka got sick game 3. That basically cost them the game, just because I think if Luka's Luka that game, I think they win game 3 and it's a different series, right? But Luka was compromised due to external circumstances out of his control. And they still had a close game, but that just kind of changed the series. Just a freak situation. So I think the next level for him is the quicker counters and more of the chess game of when your game plan doesn't work and they start countering, like how do you counter that? So that would be my thing. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Don't like AR's effort at defense getting targeted. The only thing I will say with AR and I think he tries defensively. That's one thing that now, can he get targeted and scored on? 100%. And is it an issue at times? 100%. Was it an issue at times against OKC? Yes. Was it an issue at times tonight? Yes. But I don't think it's for lack of trying. I would say there are some other guys on the team that I do think at times it's for lack of trying. Like, I think Austin genuinely tries, genuinely cares, and genuinely tries to be in the right spots. That's part of the reason why he's among the league leaders in charges drawn. But certainly there's some physical limitations that I also think as we've seen him ramp up his offense, I think we've seen the defense decline. So there's sort of a bit of a correlation there. But I guess the thing I would push back on here is the effort on defense. I don't think it's an effort problem. I do think there's a physical limitation to him. So like if you wanted to say his defense, his actual like defense or defensive effectiveness, I think that's more where I would agree. And to be clear, sometimes I say stuff and I don't think I have to add qualifiers. I'm obviously not blaming Luka for getting sick. I'm seeing some chatter about this in the chat. To be clear, it was out of his control. Emmy, thoughts on the report that Jazz value Kessler at $25 million? I heard something similar a couple of days ago, and that's why I said on the stream that I think $30 million is probably the sweet spot to really get them to cringe at that number. And I think Kessler's worth that, but I would understand if you don't love the idea of paying a center that much, or if you don't love the idea of paying a player coming off of a shoulder injury that much. But how's the camera looking here? I just want to make sure. Is it looking better? No, it's terrible. Jeez, man. This is horrible. BC says 25 is reasonable. I don't know what's going on. It's midnight. I shouldn't be having Wi-Fi issues. I don't know. I'm sorry. Hans De Leon says, I don't think Danny Ainge would trade to the Lakers. That's probably fair. Connor Phillips says, you're less likely to get aggregated. Yeah, they can aggregate my 1990s level setup right now. User says, don't need to see your mug in 4K anyway. Ouch. That is harsh. RGN Cal must be that Redondo Wi-Fi. So no, in reality, the crappy thing about my Wi-Fi setup is that my Wi-Fi is set up in the front of the house. I understand it's a very first world, YouTube podcaster problem, but my Wi-Fi set up in the front of the house. That is where the router is. And my office is on the second level and in the back. So I'm literally at the furthest point of the house from my Wi-Fi. And so I had to get a mesh Wi-Fi system and like bounce it from the front to our bedroom to in here. So it's worked well for the most part, but obviously it's completely crapping out right now. I'll end on Blurry asks, you should have had your router installed at the highest one. Well, there's no, that's where the router is, unfortunately. Like it was a pre-installed router, or like, internet cable connection. Silverhawk, I'll end on this one. Thoughts about potential NBA expansion. I am for it. I think there's a lot of factors they're going to have to figure out in terms of the financial side and how they're going to get all the owners to ultimately sign off on it. I'm sure they're going to have to agree to some sort of terms, but I think the talent in the NBA is deep enough for there to be 32 teams. I'm interested to see how they approach the potential expansion draft and what that would look like. But I think Seattle should have never lost their team, and it would be great to have the Supersonics back, and then the Vegas team move one of the Eastern West teams, because there are several East, like objectively Minnesota, New Orleans, and Memphis should all be in the East, but because of the location disparity, those teams are all West teams. So you move one of those into the East, then you add the two expansion teams. So I'm for it. I'm a little, maybe a little bit more skeptical that it's going, like, just how quickly it's going to happen. Like, we'll see, because there's been several of these reports through the last few years, and ultimately you're talking about slicing the pie, or fewer slices of the pie in smaller slices of, or I guess more slices of the pie, but smaller slices for each ownership group. And one thing we've seen, not just in the NBA, but across sports, when you mess with owners' pocketbooks, that's when things typically don't happen or changes don't happen, right? So like, why won't the NBA reduce the schedule? Because everyone's going to lose money. Why have they not done expansion yet? Because everyone's going to make less money off of the TV deal and the overall, revenue sharing and all that stuff. So money is always the common denominator here, but I'm for it. I would love it. I think it 32 is a good number, right? Same number as the NFL. I just think it makes sense. Tally Khalifa says Vancouver, please. It sounds like it's going to be Seattle and Vegas. So that is, but who knows? Maybe it expands even more. Connor asks about the Jovan emote. All right. Well, I went 10 minutes over as we do here, but I'm going to wrap in my 160p or whatever resolution, 280. I appreciate you guys for rocking with me. I hope you all enjoy your All-Star break. I will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. with Lakers Collective. And then I will be back at night. I'm going to be doing CNN tomorrow night. I think talking NBA All-Star game and tanking and all that stuff. And then I will see some of you hopefully in person on Sunday in downtown when we do our Buha's Block meetup. But again, as I said at the top, new membership emojis that some of you have been using throughout the show. So dial up Buha. Gonna figure out hopefully what is going on with the Wi-Fi, but I'll be back tomorrow. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll talk to you all soon. Hopefully see some of you soon.